So now you know who we are. Now we're going to dive into how grass-fed beef saves the world. All right, so isn't all, it's Weston Price, we all know this, but isn't all beef grass-fed? I mean, this is what we're taught. I scanned this right out of my son's children's book. Cows live in fields. They eat grass. They drink milk from their mother's udders. How often does that happen? So this is what we're told. Now, the interesting thing about beef, though, and a lot of people don't know this, is that beef is still decentralized. If you're in hog and chicken production, that animal goes from semen to cellophane, often in the same building, never having seen the light of day. But the beef industry is still different. There's still family ranches all over the country that are using a pastoral system. They've got a cow-calf operation. So they've got mother cows, they breed them, they have the calves, and then when the calves are about 6 months old, they send them off to a feedlot, which is here. But the key to this whole thing is because all these family ranches are still running this is where we're going to see the change. These are the landholders, these are the stakeholders, these are the people that have the opportunity to not send their calves here and find ways to sell to the public directly or through cooperatives. So this is where all the change has the ability to happen, because the pork industry is on a 100-acre property, which the whole thing happens right there. They don't have a chance to go back and put animals on the field because they're already completely centralized. Okay, so this is modern beef production. This is a feedlot. Now I chose this picture specifically because it had some scale. I searched in Google Images for aerial feedlot, and this is the only one that I could actually get some borders. The rest were all straight down from planes, and all you saw was a checker pattern. They couldn't fit the whole feedlot in the picture. This one, at least, you could see in the background, some other things and get some scale to see how big this is. Each one of these is a feedlot pen, okay? Which looks like that from the ground. So every one of these animals was calved out by a mom on grass, raised to 6 months old, weaned, and then sent here. Okay, so this is the feed truck going down. He's dropping. He went down this side, dropped all his feed. Now he's going to turn around, do the same thing on the bunks on this side. So this guy, I like this mad cows. I'm sick and tired of being fed antibiotics, hormones, pesticide-contaminated grain, and ground up parts of our own relatives. It's the real mad cows. So this is what potentially is put into your feedlot ration. Now I'll tell you a little bit about my history. I've been farming full-time for the last 10 years, mostly on conventional cow-calf ranches. And conventional cow-calf ranches, again, are still using very grass-based mentality. But then they send their animals here. And I defended that through and through. Oh, no, the feedlot system is great. Science supports this. You guys have no idea. Consumers are dumb. They just want food to be more expensive. They don't know what they're getting after. Then I worked here for a week. Changed my whole life. I said, I didn't know it was this bad. Consumers don't have a chance. And so it changed my whole life, and I changed the way I farm. It was the same time I read Joel Salatin's You Can Farm. But this is what these guys are getting. They're getting every trash, every cheap thing that you can come up with to try to make a buck, because it's tough. Everything about the conventional industry is about scale. And when you're on scale, quality comes last, because you're trying to make pennies. Every little penny you can shave adds up to huge dollars at the end of the year. This is a TMR. This is a total mixed ration right here. So this is all that crap, and it's awful yellow. Why is it so yellow? It's corn, right. So in there, these guys are, it's basically, I think I got this from Will Winter, eating a heavy corn-based diet like that is like eating Krispy Kremes 3 times a day, 7 days a week, all year round. Not a real healthy diet. And the antibiotic use is huge. 70% of total U.S. antibiotic production is fed to livestock. So why are they fed corn? It's cheap. Everything in this country, our policy, I know big oil sounds so scary. Big grain is scarier, I promise you. Big grain goes through and through our American blood. It's what started this country. It's what made us great. It's where the industry is driven. It's all about the corn game, okay? And so it's cheap. We've had a overproduction policy for the last 30 years, and the government subsidizes it. So it's going to end up as livestock feed because it's a great way to value add the corn. That's all they're trying to do is value add the corn. You can sell a steak for a higher price than you can sell number 2 dead corn. But what movie is this? King Corn, yeah. And so if you live on a farm like that in Iowa and don't get snow, then that's how you have a good time skiing. Much of your food is processed like this. It's tractors moving around. It's a commodity. This very much could end up in someone's Coca-Cola or Pepsi. This is a great Michael Pollan quote. If you're standing in a field in Iowa, there's an immense amount of food being grown, none of it edible. The commodity corn, nobody can eat. It must be processed before we can eat it. It's a raw material. It's a feedstock for all these other processes. And the irony is that an Iowa farmer can no longer feed himself. Who's seen The Matrix? Okay, cool. So it'll be new for some of you. Let's hope the sound works.
Here you go, Leo.
Leo.
Who are you? And how did you know my name?
I am Morpheus, and I know a lot about you. Have you heard of the Matrix?
The Matrix?
Do you want to know what it is?
Okay.
The Matrix is all around you, Leo. It is the story we tell ourselves about where meat and animal products come from. This family farm is a fantasy. Take the blue pill and stay here in the fantasy. Take the red pill and I'll show you the truth. Welcome to the real world.
Wow! What is this horrible place?
This is a factory farm, Leo. Places like this are where most eggs, milk, and meat come from.
How did this happen?
I'll show you. In the mid-20th century, greedy agriculture corporations began modifying sustainable family farming to maximize their profits at great cost to both humans and animals. Factory farming was born. Animals are packed as closely together as possible. Most never see sunlight, touch ground, or get fresh air. Many can't even turn around. These cruel conditions cause fights and disease amongst the animals. To fix this, the corporate machine began systematic mutilations, practices such as debeaking chickens. And they started adding a constant dosage of antibiotics to their feed just to keep these poor wretches alive. This overuse of antibiotics breeds super strains of resistant disease-causing germs. Every day we get closer to an epidemic that cannot be stopped.
Ew! What's that smell?
12 million pounds of excrement. This pollutes the air and groundwater. That's why communities near factory farms often suffer from high levels of related sicknesses.
Well, it smells like shh.
And what's more, factory farming corporations have been destroying communities and mistreating their workers for decades. Since 1950, over 2 million small hog farms have disappeared. If they continue at this rate, there'll be no real independent family farms left. That is the Matrix, Leo. The lie we tell ourselves about where our food comes from. But it's not too late. There is a resistance.
Count me in!
Alright. That's the Matrix. Okay. So I figure that we as consumers have to have good answers for our friends if we're going to eat a diet like this on things like the China study, forks over knives, why everyone's out there eating boneless, skinless chicken breast. And so let's dive into the science of ranching a little bit so that we're not ashamed of the meat that we're eating and so that we know where it comes from and why it could actually be better for the environment. So let's start here. What's worse? One cow, let's just call the paddocks equal. Let's ignore the size of the paddocks here. One cow in the same paddock for 100 days, or 100 cows in the paddock for 1 day. What's worse for the environment? One cow. Why one cow? Overgrazing. Who thinks 100 cows is worse? Got Alan. Go over here. Why is 100 cows worse? So there's too many animals? So I think you kind of touched on the The missing factor here is just one day. When do they come back? The factor to overgrazing is rest. We don't know when they come back. We don't know. I didn't say it. I purposely didn't define it. So let's play out both scenarios. So the one cow goes in the paddock, and to us it just looks like grass. There's a field of grass out there. But to them, there's all these different species of grasses, and there's all these different choices. And so she goes out there and she picks her first favorite thing, the thing that tastes the sweetest, the most delicious, the most palatable, the most supple. And she goes and she munches on that grass. Okay? Then she goes to her next favorite grass, and then her next favorite grass, and then her next favorite grass. Well, what's happened in that amount of time is her first favorite grass, that species, had a chance to grow back. And she goes and she bites that one. She's broken the law of the second bite. We'll talk about what that is in a second. Okay, now the other cows. 100 cows go in there. Okay? Now you're looking around going, whoa, I got all these girls next to me and they're hungry too. I'm going to eat what's ever in front of me. I don't care if it's my favorite. I'm just going to eat. And now you build in uniformity. And now they're going to eat even. And they're going to mow even. You're going to have even impact. Now when they're done, is there anything left for them to eat? No, you're right. There's nothing left for them to eat. So if this was nature, they would move on. So if I'm the rancher and I want to mimic nature, I want to figure out how to get them to move on. Because they would leave naturally on their own. Because they've pooped, peed, and eaten everything that's there to eat. They've created disturbance. Okay, so here's what happens. Cow comes in. This is our first favorite species. Takes a bite. The plant. Now you're the plant. We're going to change roles here. You're the plant. Your solar collector is damaged. You can't get energy from the sun anymore at the same efficiency. What do? Okay, I keep hearing roots. I heard two different things. So you're going to pull energy up from your roots. Because roots store sugars, like a carrot is sweet. Roots store sugars. Okay, so you're going to pull that soluble energy up, and you're going to let some of the bottom portion of your roots die off. All right? Now you're going to take that, and you're going to inverse your relationship. Sorry, wait for my lipping here. Now you have short roots, and you've got tall grass blades. This is where we break the law of the second bite. If that cow is still there, and she bites again, your reserves are missing. What do? So now you've got short blade of grass and you've got short roots. Now we've overgrazed. Before that point, it didn't matter how intensive we were, there were supplies underneath the soil. Grass is what's called a mirror species. Usually the amount of biomass above the soil is the same biomass underneath. Okay? And so now we've pulled up those reserves. Now you're short reserves. Now you've got to dig in. You've got to get your credit card, your root credit card, and you pull up a little tiny bit, and they're a struggle at that point. Now they're not going to be efficient. So what happens with the 100 cows is they go in, they bite, root sloughs up, comes up, regrowth. The cows have already moved on. They're going to wait until that root now regrows again. Now what happened to that first root that's left off? It's compost. It's organic matter. We're injecting organic matter into the soil. It's not just on the surface. We're pushing it into the soil. And this graze, move on, is what built the prairies of the Midwest. It's what we're raping now to grow corn and soy. It all came from wild rangeland herbivores grazing, injecting that compost into the soil, and then moving on for rest, and then coming back after regrowth. It's that cycle. Okay. What keeps cows together? Why do they want to stay together as a herd? Predators. That's right. Cows are amazing animals. I love cows the most of all the livestock because they're the most like people. We are really... Who thinks we're hunters in here? You think we're a hunter? When's the last time you chased down a rabbit and caught it in your bare mouth? We're tool makers. We're herding tool makers. Okay? We're our own little subset. Okay? And so we really like to make tools, which is why all this livestock stuff is fun and cool. And you can use all these techno-glitzy things. But... we are herding animals. And so if you, let's say there's one person in a movie theater, and you walk into this movie theater as one person, how many of you sit right next to them? Be kind of weird, right? Okay. So now, I open the door, I'm shoving you in, and I say, okay, I'm locking the door behind you, and oh, by the way, there's a wild mountain lion hiding somewhere in the shadows. Do you sit next to the person now? Herding animals. It's the same. Livestock like to know, oh, well, there's somebody over there, and I'm happy they're there, but I don't want to be too close to them. When you create the threat of predation, now it's like, oh, well, we're going to be buddy-buddy and stand right next to each other. And now you graze even. Okay? That doesn't happen in set stocking. When you have barbed wire fences out there and you put 10 animals or one animal on 1 acre for 100 days, that never happens. They don't ever bunch up. And then you don't get that uniform grazing, and that's how you break the law of the second bite. This is nature's mechanism to put them together. The predators cause that pressure that pushes them back in. The cows want to push outward, the predators push inward. And when you have that in balance, you get even grazing. So we mimic that with the electric fences. That's what the polynet and the 2 strands of wire are mimicking. We're bunching them back together to get that uniformity and that even grazing. Okay, so this is how it works. It's 160 feet of fence, 14 pounds, cost $160, so it's cheaper than hard fencing. You can splice it together, get as many fences together as you want, and then you run it on these solar chargers. So it's scalable. If you have 1 acre and your 160-foot fence makes a 40-foot square, you could have 27 moves on an acre. So if you have 27 moves on an acre and you moved every day, you have 26 days of rest. If you moved once a week, you have half a year of rest before you get back to the original place. So you can play with that for your needs, for the season, for the time of year, to create the right balance that you need to get. So you don't have to have thousands of acres to make this work. You can do it on a really small micro scale, which makes it cool. All right. Now, if we're going to talk to Western Price Group, we've got to talk about fermentation. The other argument you hear from people is that cows take a tremendous amount of biomass out of the system. This is really fallible. It's not really the case. The cows eat that grass. It dumps into, where's my cool pointer? It dumps into their rumen here, and the rumen is a giant fermentation tank. It's like your crock of sauerkraut on your counter. And so what it really does well is it grows bacteria. And so as the grass is fermenting in here, cows can't digest the grass any better than we do. Cellulose is really hard, fibrous, but the bacteria can. And so the bacteria grows in there, and it multiplies, and it breaks down the cellulose. And then, when that grass is ready to pass through the rest of the stomachs, the bacteria goes with it. So what the cow really grew was bacteria. That's where a huge percentage of the nutrition comes from, is that bacteria that it grew to break down the grass. And so most of the grass that came out of the field passes back out her backside, now probiotic rich, enhancing the soil. Okay, so now we're adding microbes back to the soil. So you're really creating a positive. Very little of her meat and skeletal structure came from that grass alone. Most of it came from being enriched.